Welcome to Legacy Therapy, the podcast that will teach you, in bite-sized chunks, how to leave a stress-free legacy so loved ones can focus on people, not paperwork, when you become ill or pass away. Here is your host and financial advocate, Stacey Golden-Lisnock.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Legacy Therapy, Planning Techniques for a Stress-Free Legacy. I'm your host, Stacey Golden-Lisnock, your financial advocate. And today I have with me Dr. Karen Wyatt. And I am so thrilled that she agreed to come on the show because she has some really interesting things and she's an author. And let me just read her bio for you. Dr. Karen Wyatt is a hospice physician, author, speaker, and the host of End of Life University. It's an online educational program and podcast that features conversations with experts who work in all aspects of end-of-life care. She is widely regarded as a thought leader in the effort to transform the way we care for our dying in the U.S. So this is really appropriate for the kinds of things we're working on here at Legacy Therapy Podcast, and for the program that I'm working on, Got It Together Emergency Info File, so that you have everything in one place and you can leave a stress-free legacy for your family. I just want to say, when I was looking at the books that you've written, before we get into the interview, really interesting. What Really Matters: 7 Lessons for Living from the Stories of the Dying. That was really intriguing. And then this other one looks like it's really recent. The Journey from Ego Soul to the Journey from Ego to Soul, How to Transform Your Life. And I was really interested in this because it said, sooner or later, everything falls apart. This is the challenging reality of life that we are living through. Now, as we face global climate change, economic stress, racial discord, and a viral pandemic. So that seems very appropriate and very new. So welcome, Karen. I'd love to have you. And just so thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Great. I'm just looking at all that you do. So working in the hospice area is certainly something that you have to want to do. And I was very careful when I got involved in what I'm doing too, and realizing that, where you place yourself in whatever industry you're in, you're totally in that, right? So mentally, I wasn't sure that I could really handle like talking about death and dying and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm really not doing that per se, but it feels like that's what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So how is it that you put yourself in that position?
Well, I didn't expect to be here when I started my medical career. I was a family doctor, just running a little clinic for people of all ages and doing routine medical care. When tragedy struck my family, my father died by suicide. It kind of thrust me into this whole world of facing up to death and grief in my own life. It was devastating, as you can imagine, to deal with my dad's suicide. And partly as a doctor, the guilt I felt over the fact that I couldn't save him, because that was my whole job as a doctor, to try to save people, and I couldn't save my own father. So I really struggled with my grief. And then one day got the inspiration that maybe I should look into volunteering for hospice. I didn't exactly even know what hospice did, but I knew it had something to do with death and dying and grief. So I became a hospice volunteer. And the moment I started doing that work, I realized that's where I belonged all along. It's like I found my home and my heart, in a way, in hospice. So I ended up shifting my whole career to being involved in hospice. And I learned while I did the work, but I knew it was where I was supposed to be. And my dad's death was really a catalyst that pushed me in that direction. And so from there, I learned so much about death and dying and all these spiritual lessons from being with people who were dying. And I'd also always wanted to be a writer. So I knew then someday I'd write books. And now here I am writing and speaking about death and dying.
And it's so unusual to witness somebody's death, number one, because, and when my mom had hospice, and the hospice nurses were amazing. And one of them said, it's a real gift to be able to witness someone's death, because, it's just not that common, right? That you actually get to be there and witness that. And I was just thinking, you come into the world, you're kicking and screaming and crying, and you're just like all full of life, right? And then when you go out, you're just like exhausted. You've just depleted everything out of you. It's just gone. But you have all this wisdom. And if you were able to capture that wisdom and then share that with the living, you've done something really phenomenal as well. And so I really want to read your book for sure. Can you tell a few stories that just stuck with you and like about what this journey is? It's all about anyways, from people who have transferred, they've been through it and they've been able to deposit some of their wisdom.
Yes, definitely. One of the first stories that really impacted me that I write about in the book is a woman who was at the very end of her life, and she was blind. And she had a whole tale to tell me of the fact that in her 50s, she discovered she had a lot of artistic talent. She wasn't blind at that time. And she started embroidering and doing watercolors and embroidering these beautiful designs, and then became a weaver and started weaving tapestries that were just beautiful. But she developed a condition that affected her eyesight and started losing her sight at that time. And she found it really hard to do weaving. She had to give that up because she couldn't see the threads well enough. Mm-hmm. So she ended up getting into a class for wood carvers and found out she could do that. She could carve wood because she could hold the wood really close to her face and whittle with the little wood carving knife. She started making wooden sculptures that were incredible. And her art teacher said, you have amazing talent. And here she was now in her 60s, approaching 70, and she was doing all these wood carvings. It was something brand new in her life. But then she completely lost her eyesight. Mm-hmm. And so she wasn't able to do the carving anymore. And she told me this, when she was telling me this story, I felt like, oh, how sad. You had just discovered all this talent and now you couldn't use it. And because you couldn't see anymore. And she said, no, I needed to lose my eyesight so that I could see more clearly from within me. So her wood carving teacher brought her a lump of clay and said, see what you can do with this. And she tried molding it with her hands and just feeling what a sculpture might look like with her hands, and ended up making even more incredible sculptures when she was totally blind using clay. Yeah. And what she taught me is that whatever life takes away from you, there's something else that you can discover if you just don't get discouraged, and if you just let yourself be creative and try the next thing. And so that was a really powerful lesson to see from her. She was so joyful and so full of life, even though she was at the very end and she'd lost so much by losing her eyesight. But she told me she felt like she was able to see things even more clearly now that she couldn't see externally, she could see internally.
Wow. That's incredible. That's always been my thought of, like, with all of your senses, that it would be like just horrible to be blind. Right. But, you do what you have to do. And like you say, one door opens, one door closes, another door opens, makes all your other senses so much more powerful.
Yeah. And another patient of ours who had a big impact, a man who had been extremely successful in his career and made lots and lots of money, had a huge mansion and lots of cars, but he was divorced and estranged from his son and living alone when we came in to take care of him at the end of life. And he said, you know what? None of this matters at all. None of the stuff I've accomplished, nothing I own. And he said, the only thing that matters to me right now is love. And I don't have enough of it in my life, and I never have. And so that was a good reminder that a lot of what we think matters in life doesn't really matter as much to us when we're at the very end.
Yeah.
And never neglect people in our relationships and the love that we could share.
That's that statement that, people aren't on their deathbed, wondering if they should have made more sales calls or, done more appointments or whatever. Yeah. Especially the ones that travel a lot and they're gone from their families a lot. It's like, in the end, what's the price that you paid for that? And in exchange for, money, I guess. Money is a driver for sure. Cause if you don't have it, that's all you can focus on. But
yeah, it's true. It's true. But if you always remember the love in your relationships, even if your work has to take you away from your family, I think you can find ways to keep those connections strong and make sure you're sharing love with the people back home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Keeping in touch. Cause sometimes you're like, oh, I'm so busy. I can't even make a phone call. And it's just like, really? That doesn't even make sense. Right.
Yeah.
So when you're talking like end of life, so tell us a little bit about like what people can do, right? When everybody's going to get to their end of life at some point. Some people have a lingering end of life. So then that's where I'm guessing the hospice more comes in when what is the rules around hospice? Because I always thought hospice meant that was it, but then I've seen people go off of hospice.
Mm-hmm. A patient can be admitted to hospice when their doctor feels they have 6 months or less to live, and they have a condition that's considered terminal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when they're really at the last 6 months of life, except it's very hard to predict that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some patients end up coming on hospice and they get really good care. And sometimes they go into remission, or they just suddenly get better for a while and they end up living longer. And then they can go off hospice care when that happens. So 6 months or less is the general rule. But as I said, it's really hard for doctors to actually accurately predict when that 6 month time is.
Yeah. So people can actually plan for their own end of life?
Well, one thing that people do need to think about is what kind of care would they like to receive at the end of life? And it really involves, do you want invasive advanced care at the very end of life? Would you want to be put on a ventilator and have your body kept alive artificially, even if you go into a coma and you can't wake up or speak or interact? Would you want that kind of those extreme measures to keep your body alive, because we have the technology to do that? And it's really important for people to think about it and face that, because that's kind of the default care in our system right now. The medical system will do everything to keep you alive. And if that's what you want, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you're a person who thinks, wow, don't put me on a machine. If it's my time to go, let me go.
Right.
That's when you need to have an advanced care plan. So you can tell your loved ones and your doctors, don't do that. Don't do that. Just give me hospice care. Take care of me. Keep me comfortable. Let me be surrounded by the people I love, and let me go when it's my time. Though that's a really crucial matter to consider. That probably sounds scary to a lot of people to think about that. Yeah. But if you don't think about it, you'll end up, someone else will make these decisions for you. And if you do think about what you might like to have around the end of life, you can actually plan for it. You can fill out a living will and an advance directive that other people will follow when they're making decisions for you at the very end of life.
Yeah. Wow. So are you finding that, like, well, people, I guess, are all ages and stages, right? When in hospice, it's not just everybody's 85 years old or 100 years old, right? You've got, so can it be like, I don't know, like it could be a young person with like, that's even just like an accident victim versus like a cancer victim.
It's possible. Oftentimes accident victims, though, they have so many critical care needs, they'll end up being in an intensive care unit, and that's where they're getting care. So most of the time it could be cancer, it could be chronic heart disease or some other kind of organ failure like diabetes, something chronic. Alzheimer's patients sometimes end up on hospice as well. a chronic disease that has kind of slowly caused decline for that person's health. And when they're getting near the end of that trajectory, that's when hospice can come in and take care of people. Many times it's in the person's home, so their family is there with them, taking care of them, and hospice workers come in, but it could be in a hospice facility too, where people stay.
Yeah. So that's a specific, is it usually part of something else, the hospice thing, or is it's on its own?
It's really on its own. It's a specific type of care that has a different payment system in Medicare and everything. But Medicare covers it, and most insurances do also if a patient qualifies for hospice care.
Wow. And I've heard only good things about it. So, and I know there's lots of independent companies, right? There's all kinds of companies. So you can actually interview them and find out what, and you can switch in the middle, I understand, if you get.
Yes. Yeah, you can change hospice companies, and it is a good idea to be aware of what's available in your community. Do you have choices in your community, and get references and hear stories from other people about the kind of care they got, because not all hospices are alike. Some are better than others. And so it is good to make a wise choice about that if you feel like you'd like that. I was going to say, in my own case, as my mom got older, when she was about 85, she decided to fill out an advance directive, and she told me, I want to be in my own home when it's time for me to die. This is where I want to be, and I would like you to be here with me and take care of me. And it was about 5 years later that she actually died. But the fact that she made that decision and told my brother and me that helped us so much, because then we knew, like, when she was in the hospital, she'd been diagnosed with biliary cancer, and we knew she wants to be at home. So we took her home. We got her out of the hospital and brought her home, because we knew she wanted that more than anything.
Yeah.
So that was just an example of when someone thinks ahead, even though it's a little scary to imagine, like, what would be best? What would I prefer to have? This is the type of thing, it helps your family members make choices and decide how to support you.
I remember reading a statistic, something where when people are asked, would they rather, die in a hospital or die at home, it's overwhelmingly they would rather die at home, yet the majority of people die in the hospital. Yeah, because they haven't made plans.
They haven't made plans or talked to their family about it. And sometimes when it comes down to, with my brother and me, it was our decision. Do we take her home or not? And it's only because she had told us adamantly that she wanted to be at home that we had the courage to do that, to say, no, we're taking her home and we'll manage her care there. Yeah. And if people don't talk to their loved ones and tell them what they want, just don't get honored. Their family members won't have the confidence to bring them home and to make sure they have that.
Yeah, that's huge. That's really huge. And even, and like in today with the COVID and everything, if you're in a hospital, no one is there able to visit you either. So.
Yeah, I think this has been such a challenging year, so hard and so sad for people being separated from their loved ones at the end of life. So yeah, that's something, if we could prevent that from happening, we would love to, because it makes such a difference being able to have your loved ones nearby.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do, as far as like living your life fully and preparing for that end of life thing, it's like, I think there's a superstition, kind of like, if I start planning for my death, like it's imminent, like sooner, then it's always going to happen, right? But people get a little bit bizarre when they think, well, if I start really planning for this, it means that I'm in some subconscious way, like willing it.
So I think it's just natural for us to have an innate fear of dying. But what I found is facing it in advance, long before I'm ready for it. I'm not even there yet. And understanding, like, life is actually short and fleeting. It goes by really quickly. And being able to just look at that and acknowledge that truth about life. And then to think, hey, when it's my time, I'll I'll be ready to go, and I'd like to go with dignity and gracefully and with love and have my family with me, more than ending up in some facility on a ventilator in a coma. I don't really want that for myself. And so having made that decision and putting it in writing, now I feel so much freer in a way. I just really don't have to think about that or worry about that. I'm freer to just live my life. And that's what I try to emphasize to people. Actually, once you face your fear and once you go ahead and think about it and make a plan for yourself, it lightens the load in a way. It frees you up, and then you can go on and really enjoy life and everything that life is offering you.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. And really the program that I've created too, this Got It Together emergency info file, that's the whole goal of that too. Once you have the work done and you have everything in place and you've looked at everything and made sure it's proper, you have the right beneficiaries and everything's good, then you have freed up a lot of like that energy that gets sucked away by worrying about not having things ready to go.
It's so true. And it's really a gift for your family members too, because it will make a difference for them when you do die and when they're trying to sort things out. If you have everything in place already, you've saved them so much work and stress and possibly conflict with one another over, what would mom have wanted us to do about this? It's all in writing. It's all the decisions have been made.
Yeah. I'm convinced, I'll tell you, I'm convinced you got to just get everybody else on board here because I think that advanced directive percentage of the population, something like 1 in 3 have actually done one.
Yeah, it's still really low. I'm wondering if this year of COVID is going to spur more people. I mean, a lot of people have been forced to think about death and end of life issues because of COVID. It's kind of in our faces all the time right now. So I'm hoping that makes a difference for people. And then once you've taken care of these details, the things that you can actually make decisions about and get in order, then you can really stop and think, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? What do I want to focus on? What really matters to me? And not be hiding or denying in a way the fact that death will come one day. Just embrace it and then go on and enjoy every moment of life that you have.
Yeah. Wow, that must have been just quite a journey for you, just having the people tell their stories in their final days. Or how did you actually do that? Was that just they just volunteered, or did you prompt them, or how did you get these stories?
Yeah, in the hospice I worked for, I got to visit all of our patients in their homes. We took care of patients where they lived in their homes. And so I would sometimes be with them for an hour at a time, sometimes even multiple visits with patients and their families. And a lot of times they were really eager to tell me their stories. And so part of helping them think about life coming to an end was just to ask them, what did you learn in life? What wisdom do you have to share? And that was an important thing for them to see. They could leave that as part of their legacy too, for their family members, put things in writing or make a recording talking about what did they learn? How did they get through a hard time in their life? What helped? So spending a lot of time with people, focusing on that and listening to all their stories is what helped me learn from their wisdom as well and learn how to apply that to my own life.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And so you have this this university. What is it called? It's called
End of Life University. And it's a podcast for one thing. So I do a podcast too once a week and interview people all around, people who are doing hospice care or work as death doulas, or sometimes in the funeral industry, in all sorts of areas around end of life. And then I also do courses from time to time and workshops and webinars that I offer. Sometimes I have guest speakers come and do those just to help people get educated, which is, I think, what you're doing too, just because
absolutely.
Everyone needs to know more about this subject.
They really do. And isn't it amazing that it's a definite thing that happens to everyone, and we're struggling to get people educated about it. The people that are in that realm.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think. Well, I think we've been able to insulate ourselves in a way from looking at death and seeing death, as you said, because so many people have never even been with someone
Mm-hmm.
who was dying. So back in the 19th century, everyone had the experience of being with someone who died, since most people died at home.
Yeah.
And so death wasn't so strange or foreign or frightening in a way because everyone had witnessed it.
Right.
And a lot of people had their funerals at home too. They had wakes and funerals in the home. And now we've had over 100 years of being away from that. And that's why we're now reintroducing death as if it's something new that we that we didn't know about before.
Yeah, well, that sounds exactly right. Yes, the old things become the new things again. We see that in fashion and everything else. So why not?
Yeah.
So why not in that? Wow. Well, how can people get a hold of you? I mean, they could probably go listen to your podcast, right? And get on your website and take a look. What is that website
If they go
address?
to eoluniversity.com, that's for, and EOL stands for end of life. So eoluniversity.com, and they can find out everything about my books, the podcast, any courses I'm teaching, and pretty much everything that's going on. And they can contact me through the website also.
Wow, that's really great. So is that really what you do full time now? Or are you still doing actual hands-on hospice work?
No, I retired from clinical medicine. Yeah, so this is what I'm doing now. This is kind of my second late life career doing this, and it's really enjoyable. It's been really fascinating and interesting getting to meet people like you who are also trying to educate the world here about these issues.
I think the education is coming from the masses now. You know, people are seeking out education, and the people that have the wisdom are trying to educate, and it's all working out for everybody. I think this online world is totally different than the corporate, brick and mortar fashion way.
Yeah, definitely. And we really are. We're going through a hard time right now, a really challenging time, but we're learning new things and we're adapting and we're figuring things out as we go. So I think that there will be some blessings from all of it when we come through on the other side.
Yeah. Just like your blind lady, it's like the things you think are just the most horrible. Actually, there's silver linings in pretty much everything. I've been able to do this program because of COVID, because I had that uninterrupted, time where I had nothing else that I could do or could be doing or should be doing. And it just gave me that block of consistency to be able to do it. So that's my silver lining around the COVID thing. But unfortunately, just lost a cousin last Sunday from it. Just the first person that I've personally known that succumbed to that. So, and I know there's what is it 300,000 now? I don't know what the number is. I try not to watch the news now because I got myself real upset when I watched how many people were being infected every day and hospitalized, and ICUs were at like zero capacity and it left and all that. So.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I feel that way too. You have to take it in lightly, a little bit at a time, because it's hard to grasp, hard to wrap our minds around this, and that it's not just happening here, it's around the world.
Exactly.
It's probably the worst in our country right now, but it's amazing to think of something that's affecting everyone on the planet at the same time.
It really is. It's quite alarming. I mean, to really think about the scope of that and how so many lives have changed. I actually have a client that lives in Italy, and Italy was the one that got hit the very beginning, and they were just like, they were very serious about, the country, about nobody goes anywhere. I mean, they had a lockdown, and so, and their society is quite older. They have like their average age. I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of older people that live in Italy. And so they were just homebound, and then he's recently emailed me again now and said that things have kind of spiked again and he doesn't know what's going to happen. And, it's scary. It's really scary.
It definitely is. And so this is a time, I think, when, like, what I try to emphasize in my teaching is know what really matters to you in your life. And it's a time when we need to focus on that.
Yeah.
And if it's your family and friends that matter more than anything else, this is the time to stay in contact and stay close.
Yeah. You know, Zoom has been just a blessing too. We started doing Zoom birthdays, and we're going to do a Zoom holiday, and including people that normally, you know, aren't anywhere near us, but they're relatives, but we've just not been able to be together on any of these birthdays or any of these things. So now everybody gets to come together. So that's another silver lining. It's just like, why this was available, FaceTime and all Duo and all the different ways you could do video chatting and stuff. But it just never occurred to us before to do things like that way.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We humans are creative. We really are at our core. And so sometimes it takes distress like this to bring out our creativity and to help us see we can find all kinds of ways of getting by and of being okay and making things work out when we're forced to. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, so we did give everybody a way to get a hold of you, right? So EOLuniversity.com. Okay. Yeah. And then, and they can check out your podcast too. That would be really nice. People want to get more information. So I really appreciate you coming on, Karen. It's been really a blessing for me because, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to reach out and see if she'll bite. And you were very gracious to accept my invitation. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah. It's my pleasure. Good luck with your work and your holiday celebrations.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. You have a good holidays too. This is probably going to air after that, but yeah, it will definitely. It'll be in January. Okay. We'll be in 2021, maybe in different territory at some point. But I just want to close by telling everyone that they should take a look at the website, www.gotittogethernow.com, and just take a look at the program and see if it's something that you would like to aspire to do to leave a stress-free legacy for your family. And thanks again for being the guest. And I'll sign off now. This is Stacey Golden-Lisnock, your financial advocate. And have a good day. And also remember to stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Legacy Therapy Podcast. If we hit it out of the park today and you learned at least one new thing to take action on in your own quest to planning the best legacy possible, then be sure to tell your friends, subscribe, and rate and review wherever you get your podcast. The show notes will provide the sites and information that were discussed today. You can get more great tips, resources, and inspiration by visiting our website, legacytherapypodcast.com.